I hung it at the entrance. Take care of it for a week. Huh? Take care of what? My usually self-centered sister-in-law suddenly called me out of the blue. She said she left her baby in a reusable bag at our doorstep. But we moved yesterday? As soon as she heard my reply, my sister-in-law started yelling. I'm overseas. Find him right away. I hurriedly drove to the house we used to live in, but the baby was nowhere to be found. I thought, I have to call the police. With trembling hands, I took out my phone, little knowing the horrifying truth that awaited me. 10 years ago, I married my husband Ben and we lived together. We wanted children, but it didn't happen, and before we knew it, I was 38. Taking advantage of me was my sister-in-law, Tiffany, 5 years my junior. Her husband was a CEO, and my husband worked for his company. Using his position, Tiffany, who lived just a 10-minute drive away, often asked me to do her shopping, and after she got pregnant, she called me over more often, even making me clean the house and cook dinner. Even though I'm someone who enjoys taking care of others, I finally told my husband that it was too much. But he just said, I'll talk to her eventually. Sorry, but could you keep helping out for a while? He's probably being used by Tiffany's husband, so he must be in a tough spot. Thinking this, whenever Tiffany called, I reluctantly went to her house. Ugh, my stomach is heavy. Hey, Wendy. Stop daydreaming and get me the TV remote. Huh? What's with you? My sister-in-law was only 3.5 months pregnant. Yet, it felt like her stomach was already big. But since she was originally on the plump side, I didn't say anything extra. For an easier delivery, maybe you should move around a bit? You've never been pregnant, so don't give me advice. Ah, just as I expected. This child is our family's heir. What's wrong with taking care of him? She lounged on the sofa, maintaining her arrogant attitude, and I gradually became more stressed and worn out. But when I questioned if the gender could be determined at 3.5 months, she got angry like a lit fuse. Your brain must be ancient. With modern technology, gender can be determined quickly. I didn't feel like arguing with her insistence on the obvious, so I just listened to her complaints with exasperation. You're just jealous because you can't get pregnant. Seriously bad for prenatal education. If anything happens to this child, it's your fault. Finally, she began to threaten me using her unborn child as a shield. Being around her felt suffocating, and I quickly finished my errands, sighing as I returned home. When I told my husband about it after work, he just said, just a little more patience. So, with a heavy heart, I continued to endure it. It was painful to carry such feelings, so whenever Tiffany called, I made excuses and declined. However, Tiffany complained to my husband that I was being mean to her, leaving him at his wit's end. Despite saying I had things to do, she wouldn't listen and kept calling me multiple times. Helpless, when I finally answered the phone, she let out a piercing voice that grated on my ears. Wendy, do you not care if my husband's position at work gets worse? You haven't forgotten that my husband is the CEO, have you? My husband, usually gentle and kind. With the sole intention of not causing him trouble, I had no choice but to go to Tiffany's place. And as time passed, Tiffany gave birth to a boy a month earlier than expected. Furthermore, the baby weighed over 140 ounces. I thought, despite being born early, isn't he too big? I wondered, but since I had never experienced pregnancy, I accepted that it might just be how things are. Tiffany named the child Sean and, as expected, called me as soon as she was discharged from the hospital, asking me to take care of the baby. Think of it as practice for childcare and fulfill your role as a wet nurse properly. You never know if you'll be blessed with one yourself, huh? I was annoyed by my sister-in-law's attitude, but considering how difficult things must be right after giving birth, I visited her every time she called. Plus, the baby was just so adorable. Sean, you're such a good boy. Grow up healthy, okay? Even tasks like changing diapers and giving baths for the first time didn't feel like a burden when I looked at the child's face. However, when 3 months passed, my sister-in-law started dropping the baby off at my house. What's going on? You're all dressed up. My husband has a business dinner with some important people. I have to accompany him. So, I'm leaving Sean with you, the wet nurse. Although I thought it must be tough for the CEO's wife, who was now energetic again, to have so much to do, I diligently took care of the baby. But after that, Tiffany started bringing Sean over more and more frequently. Counting on you again today. Isn't this getting a bit too much? You're not accompanying your husband again, are you? My husband is dealing with important negotiations right now, and I'm helping him. You should cooperate too. With an aggressive tone, my sister-in-law forced the baby onto me and hastily left. I thought, is wearing such a frilly dress really practical? Despite my doubts, I couldn't just leave the baby in front of me, so I attended to his needs. However, on that particular day, when I changed his diaper, I discovered that Sean had diarrhea. He didn't have a fever and seemed lively, so I warmed up the room more than usual and monitored him closely. In the evening, when Tiffany came to pick him up and I informed her about it, she aggressively confronted me. You useless piece of... Did you feed him something to make him sick out of spite? When I shook my head, denying any wrongdoing, my husband returned home. What's all the commotion at the door? Big bro. I entrusted Sean to sis-in-law because I trust her. But she made him sick. Her voice, usually rough when berating me, now sounded meek, and she started crying. I understand where Tiffany's coming from. Wendy has no experience in childcare. It was a bit cold today, so maybe he caught a chill. I'll apologize, so please forgive her. My husband stood up for me, but without having done anything wrong, I didn't see the point in apologizing. With a sense of frustration, I watched Tiffany and Sean leave. Feeling dejected, as I started preparing dinner, my husband suddenly put on a serious expression and took out an A4-sized envelope from his bag. Wendy, there's something important I need to tell you. Forget about dinner for now and have a seat. Presented with the documents spread out on the table and the words my husband uttered, I couldn't immediately believe it. Moreover, it was something I hadn't even imagined, so I was taken aback. However, seeing my husband's unwavering determination, I quietly nodded. A week later, as I was unpacking and tidying up cardboard boxes, my sister-in-law called me. I left him hanging on your house's doorknob, so take care of him for a week. Huh? Take care of what? Don't play dumb. It's obviously our kid. You've already taken him inside, right? Upon closer inspection, I realized that since I wasn't home, she had put the baby in the reusable bag I had and hung it on the doorknob. Hearing this, I was shocked and flustered. Wait a minute. We moved yesterday, so we're not going back to that house. Please go pick up Sean right away. However, my sister-in-law responded with, Huh? You're lying again, aren't you? And didn't believe what I was saying. But when I responded with a serious tone, insisting it was true, she suddenly panicked. Turns out, she had left Sean behind 5 hours ago. And to my surprise, I learned she was currently traveling abroad. It was still chilly despite being spring, and the temperature hadn't risen much that day. Go pick up Sean right now. Hurry. More concerned about the baby than infuriated by my sister-in-law's attitude, I immediately drove off. An hour later, I arrived at our old house and checked the doorstep, but there was no sign of Sean. I thought. And no reusable bag. Why? I searched the yard thoroughly and asked neighbors, but everyone just said, I don't know. I thought. How come there were no cries either? Feeling like there was no use continuing the search, I thought of calling the police, and I grabbed my phone. That's when I received a call from someone. What? What do you mean? Listening to the shocking content, I was speechless. After the call ended, unable to process my thoughts, I walked around in a daze until my sister-in-law called. He was in the reusable bag hanging on your doorstep, right? About that, he's nowhere to be found. Seriously. This is bad. If we don't find Sean, my husband will divorce me, and it'll be your fault. Even over the phone, I could sense Tiffany's panic. Unable to continue like this, I decided to inform her that I would report it to the police and have them search. But she adamantly refused. If you do that, it'll become a big deal, and my husband will find out. Isn't Sean more important than your image? Sean is just a tool for extracting money from my husband. Hearing those words, I was stunned by her selfishness. Ignoring my presence, I heard her talking to someone else. After a while, Tiffany said something even more unbelievable. My flight for today got cancelled, but I'll return tomorrow. Don't let my husband find out. If you find Sean, let me know immediately. I'll do what I can. After hearing my response, Tiffany seemed satisfied and hung up. The next day, as I waited at the airport, Tiffany appeared arm in arm with a man. Upon seeing me, she approached with a displeased expression. Wendy. What are you doing here? Did you find Sean? I came to tell you something important. Sean is gone, out of your reach. It's too late. With a downcast, sorrowful expression, I delivered the news, and Tiffany began to fluster. That's a lie. What am I supposed to tell my husband? You useless. Find another baby that looks similar and bring it here. How could you say that? Aren't you still a mother? Suggesting that we find another baby of similar age to pass off as Sean to her husband, Tiffany's selfishness enraged me. Filled with anger and sadness, I couldn't help but shed tears. But as I wiped away the tears from my cheeks, I firmly met her gaze. Instead of searching for a look-alike, talk to this person. As I said that, a woman hiding behind me, her hood pulled low, finally revealed her face. And not just Tiffany, but also the man beside her, trembled visibly. Yes, she was the wife of Tiffany's cheating partner. Too shocked to move, the man was then berated by his wife, who exclaimed, "You scum! I'll beat some sense into you." And without hesitation, she delivered a resounding slap to him, right then and there. The force was so intense that passers-by stopped in their tracks. Cradling her husband as he slumped to the ground, she turned her gaze toward Tiffany. Then, Tiffany quickly paled and started speaking rapidly. Excuse me. Please don't get the wrong idea. We're not in that kind of relationship. Huh? Hold on, Wendy. Stop recording with your phone. Despite trying to cover it up, my sister-in-law flipped out on me for having my phone up, seemingly to capture the scene. But I remained calm. So, how do you explain this? From the envelope I had brought, I pulled out emails between my sister-in-law and her affair partner, as well as cozy photos I found on social media. Tiffany forcibly snatched them from me and glared at me. Snooping around like that is despicable. How did you even find this guy's wife's contact? I happen to know his wife. She's someone I've met before. Huh? When I saw my sister-in-law's affair partner on social media, I recognized him as the husband of the woman who does my hair at the salon. Though he was also a hairstylist, his wife owned multiple salons and was skilled and successful. In contrast, I heard that her husband didn't work and just wandered around aimlessly, earning him the title of idle hairstylist. When I went to inform his wife about Tiffany's affair trip, she said, "I've had enough. I'm joining in too." And came along. Though she usually had a gentle and kind demeanor, I was honestly surprised at how scary she could be when angry. Facing the philandering idle hairstylist, his wife, rubbing their hands together like a fly, continuously begged, "Please don't divorce me." Meanwhile, I sensed her strong determination as she steadfastly shook her head. And Sean turns out to be a child from infidelity, huh? Huh? You're just saying random things with no evidence. But being born a month early and weighing over 140 ounces is quite large, isn't it? And you're probably hiding the actual number of weeks, right? As I said this, I presented documents from another envelope, a maternity record book and proof that Tiffany's husband and Sean weren't related. You're playing dirty tricks. But if I tear these up, it'll be as if nothing happened. Tiffany snatched the DNA test results from me and tore them up on the spot, looking smug. She probably thought she could get away with it, but it wouldn't be that easy. It's better to talk directly with the person who gave me these documents. When I turned my phone screen toward Tiffany, her eyes and mouth widened so much it looked like she was about to scream. And for good reason. On the screen was Tiffany's husband. I hadn't been recording, I had been video calling with Tiffany's husband the whole time. Tiffany. You lied about going to your parents' house, and you dared deceive me like this. Well. Repeating words that made no sense at all, my sister-in-law stumbled. Standing before her, I spoke slowly. Listen carefully, because I'm going to explain everything step by step. A week ago, Tiffany's husband, after finding emails between Tiffany and her affair partner, had suspicions and decided to get a DNA test for Sean. At the same time, he lied to Tiffany about going on a week-long business trip. Then Tiffany, upon receiving the email from her affair partner, immediately booked a trip online. In her excitement, she didn't even think about erasing her browsing history. On the day of the trip, Tiffany put Sean in a reusable bag, hung it on the doorstep of the house where I used to live, and happily skipped off to the train station. Your husband, who was following you, ended up rescuing Sean. If he hadn't, who knows what would have happened after being left on the doorstep for over 5 hours. Huh? So, Sean is alive? Yeah, he's with me right now. When I couldn't find Sean and was about to call the police, Tiffany's husband called me instead. Shocked but eager to learn more details, I immediately went to his house. Sean was playing energetically, waving his arms and legs while holding a rattle. As I listened to the situation, I remembered that despite being born a month early, he weighed over 140 ounces. I reluctantly accepted it at the time, but I still found it odd. With Tiffany's husband's permission, I searched through her belongings and found the maternity record book. Upon examining its contents, I discovered that my sister-in-law had falsified the baby's gestational age. Why would Tiffany do such a thing? Upon tracing back the timing of her actual pregnancy, it coincided with the period when my sister-in-law's husband was on a long business trip, away for about 2 months. In other words, it was an impossible situation for the baby's father to be her husband. Realizing she was pregnant with her affair partner's child, Tiffany likely thought she could pass it off with just a 1-month discrepancy. However, the unexpected birth of a big baby revealed her deception, leading to suspicion from me. At this point, the affair partner, whose child's existence was now exposed, began apologizing to his wife, prostrating himself on the floor and banging his head. However, his wife coldly said, "From now on, you'll live on your own," and slammed the divorce papers on the table. As she kicked away the begging adulterer and walked away, her determined stride radiated confidence. On the other hand, my sister-in-law's husband wasn't staying silent either. Of course, we're getting divorced. Go be with that man over there. No way. I only liked his face. He's broke anyway. Are you with me just for money? Hit with a nerve, my sister-in-law faltered in her response. You said Sean was just a tool to extract money from your husband. Stop talking nonsense. I heard yesterday's phone call from Wendy. To ensure my sister-in-law couldn't wriggle out of this, I recorded our conversation for evidence. While we were talking, Tiffany's husband, who had been silently listening, turned red with deep furrows in his forehead. Upon learning the shocking truth, my sister-in-law seemed to tremble slightly. However, after a moment, she remembered something and peered into her phone screen. If Sean had been fine, everything would have been okay, right? Besides, even though we're not biologically related, I gave birth to him, so he's practically your child too. With such a feeble and selfish argument, both Tiffany's husband and I involuntarily exclaimed, "Huh?" at the same time. Seeing our reactions, Tiffany seemed to think she had managed to evade the situation successfully. She put her hands on her hips and looked smug. With just one word. Enough. Tiffany's husband ended the call abruptly. Hey, why did you do that? I did everything you asked me to as much as possible. Didn't it suit your taste? Tiffany tried calling her husband from her phone, but he rejected the call and she couldn't get through. Anyway, Tiffany. Did you know that putting Sean in the reusable bag and leaving was a crime? When I showed her the screen, Tiffany, suddenly trembling, collapsed on the spot. Tiffany, we're done here. Goodbye. With nothing more to say, I left Tiffany behind and walked away, feeling a shiver down my spine. When I looked back, my sister-in-law had a terrifying expression, her eyes bloodshot and her eyebrows twitching. I'll tell my brother on you. It's because of you that I moved without telling him, and now all this happened. My husband decided to move because he felt sorry for me being exploited by you. And of course, he knows everything about this incident. He won't let you near our family again. Feeling abandoned by the only ally she thought she had, my sister-in-law cried out loud on the spot. Even after all this, she didn't utter a single word about Sean. How selfish can one be? This is not the time to cry. Go and pick up Sean immediately. If I'm getting divorced, I don't need the baby. What kind of person are you? I won't forget your words. No matter what happens, I won't let Sean return to you. Having bid farewell to my irredeemable sister-in-law, I walked away with a certain determination in my heart. Later, I reported my sister-in-law abandoning the baby to the police. Though he was quickly taken into custody, her actions were deemed severe, and Tiffany faced significant interrogation by the police. My sister-in-law was served divorce papers by her husband and cut off from her own family, leaving her alone. Having been demanded $15,000 each in compensation from her husband and her affair partner's wife, Tiffany borrowed money with her affair partner to pay the compensation. However, as it turned out, the company she borrowed from was shady, and she ended up being forced to work in dimly lit places to repay the debt. My determination is to raise Sean as my own child. When I told my husband, he readily accepted. Oh, I almost forgot. I'm also blessed with a new life. I'll cherish these children and ensure they live happily.